You're listening to the Adventurous Reinvention Podcast. I'm Allison Boyle, aka She Dreams of Alpine, and this is the show that's dedicated to all the adventurous spirits out there who have either been transformed by the outdoors or are interested in what it looks like to step into a new, adventurous, and courageous kind of identity in their life. It doesn't matter what your background is in the outdoors, what age you're starting at, or where you grew up. If you're curious about the outdoors and using adventure as a way to reinvent yourself, you're in the right place. I'll be sharing all kinds of personal adventure stories, lessons I've learned from the mountains, teaching what I know about the outdoors and leadership, and interviewing some amazing adventurous women all along the way. I've been coaching women on becoming safe, confident, and self-sufficient backpackers and leaders of their own adventurous lives since 2018, and I know exactly what big fears and self-doubts can pop up along the way. I have so much to share with you, so let's dive in. All right, welcome my friends to the Adventurous Reinvention Podcast. I am so excited to announce that we have officially, as of today, when you are listening to this podcast, opened enrollment for our 2026 Adventurous Reinvention Experience. Now, this is my signature 4-month coaching program that we take you on a process of creating a life that makes you feel just as alive as you do on the trail. And it also includes an in-person backpacking adventure. So we actually get to go out to the trail and embody all this work that we do together this summer. And we do that in an epic adventure in the Eastern Sierras in California. And you get to meet all the women that you've been working with all summer. It's really about just like shifting the narrative, taking charge of the story that you want to create in your life and having a summer that you'll never forget. And today's episode, I am bringing on one of my clients for who attended last year's Adventurous Reinvention Experience and was part of that program. And her name is Carey, and I'm going to be sharing her story with you. We got on a call together. We talked about her experience. She got to share kind of what reinvention process stuff she worked through, her experience with the in-person adventures, and like what she kind of took from all of that. And we did this interview not that long ago because we just did it not that long ago. But what's interesting about that is that you'll get to hear kind of like what's unfolded almost 6 months after her Adventurous Reinvention Experience from last year as well. So as I mentioned, enrollment for that program is now open, but a little heads up, it is right now. We always open up enrollment for anything that includes an in-person aspect. We open enrollment to our existing clients. So that's people that are already inside of our Backpacking Badass program or anybody who has attended a past retreat of ours. They get first dibs at spots. Since there are limited spots in this program, there's only 36 spots total. So the program is open to them this week, but the next phase of that is we open up enrollment to our wait list. So if you're interested in learning more about what this Adventurous Reinvention Experience is all about and you want to be on the wait list, go to shedreamsofalpine.com/ARE. And I will also link that in the show notes, and you can learn everything you need to know and be first in line to hear about those remaining spots when the doors open to the wait list on April 6th. I cannot wait for you to listen to Carey's story, hear more about her experience inside the program, and be inspired by her. And she is such an example of what's possible, and I cannot wait for you to get to know her better. All right, so let's dive in. All right. Hello. Welcome back to the Adventurous Reinvention Podcast. Today, I have my wonderful client, Carey, on the podcast. Carey, I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for joining me.
I'm really, really excited to be here. I've been waiting for you to ask me to do this podcast since August.
I love that. Yeah, we reached out to like some of our clients from our past Adventurous Reinvention Experience, which is like the same name as the podcast, but it's our experience. If they would be interested to be on the podcast. And I was super happy to see that you were, because I am very eager to like share your story, and your background is just so interesting, which people are going to hear about today. So when you entered our community, you actually, so the first time I met you or remember meeting you, it's like was through our Adventurous Reinvention Experience, which is our more intimate coaching service outside of the Backpacking Badass program. And you also became a Backpacking Badass student just around the same time you joined both the programs. But I want to talk about where you were in life when you discovered our Adventurous Reinvention Experience. This is like about a year ago at this time people are listening. It's April 2025. I'm curious to know a little bit more about your decision to join because this program is a slightly bigger commitment than our Backpacking Badass program and time commitment and deadlines. And it has some travel and like there's more finances involved as well than our Backpacking Badass program. So before we get into all of that, I'm curious to know about you. So were you somebody who already saw yourself as adventurous, or was that identity still forming for you?
Yeah, well, I definitely always saw myself as adventurous,
Yes.
and outdoorsy. I mean, that's really been the core of my identity, I think, probably my whole adult life. Um,
Yes.
I think why it was really important for me to just, well, okay, let me back up. That has always been the core that I have come back to at
Right.
difficult various parts in my life, which was sort of where I was in my life when I joined, which I know is another
Yes.
question. But I would say being an adventurous, outdoorsy person is probably essential and core to my health and well-being. It's always been who I am.
Yeah. I'm actually curious because I don't know if I ever asked you this when we were together in the program or working together in the program, but did you grow up outdoorsy too? Did you have like family like when you were younger?
Well, interestingly, so I grew up in Telluride, Colorado, which is very
Mm,
outdoorsy, but
yes.
interestingly, when you're a kid and you're growing up around that sort of stuff, you don't, well, at least in my situation, I didn't really understand how amazing of a situation and place I was growing up in until
Oh, yeah.
I became an adult. Um,
Yes. Classic.
so I really wouldn't, it's not, when you're growing up in an environment like that, it's not like you go out for day hikes and everything because you're in school and you're doing
Right.
life as a kid. So I actually didn't come to being really what I consider to be kind of an adventurous, outdoorsy person really until my young adulthood. So I came
Okay.
to it late, even though
Yeah.
it was always part of my kind of the
It's
fabric.
been part of your life like for a long time now, but yeah, you're kind of like me, like kind of found it in our mid 20, maybe mid 20s then it sounds like.
Yeah, I think mid 20s when I was in graduate school, I just
Yeah.
really discovered and then moved to California. Ironically, I had to come to California via Colorado and Switzerland and all these places, but it really
Yeah.
was to California that I discovered what a resource that was for me.
Yeah, that's crazy. And we're going to talk a little bit more about like Carrie's adventurous background in a minute because actually when I got on the call with her, like that was one of the things that most surprised me. I was like, "Oh, wow, you have a lot of experience and you have a lot of experience in the Sierras too, which we'll dig into a little bit, but maybe you can tell us a little bit more about like what season of life you were in when you discovered ARE and kind of like what inspired you to book a discovery call with me. So, like, just before you get into that, for people listening, like sometimes people hop on a sort of discovery call with me to see if it's a good fit or to see which we have different group trips with different skills abilities that you can sign up for. And so sometimes we're discussing that too. So Carrie booked one of those calls, and that was like the first time I got to have a conversation with her. So, yeah, give us some background on that.
Yeah, so what season of life was I in? I was in a very difficult season of
Yeah.
life. I was just about to turn 50 and I had a 15-year-old daughter, and I had just left a long-term relationship. So everything in my life felt very unstable, and I didn't know what was ahead of me. I was also in my first year of menopause.
Yeah.
I like to talk about every opportunity I get because I think we don't talk about that
A
enough.
100%. Yes.
And I had just left a very steady hospital job working at Kaiser as a
Mm,
psychologist that I had been at for 7 years to just pursue my private practice
yeah.
exclusively. So I was at a
A lot
very,
of things going on.
I had
Yes.
a lot of major, major, major changes happening in my life all at the same time.
Right.
Um, and so it was a
Were
very,
you already, so were you already on our mailing list, or did you just happen to stumble across us
no,
around that
I,
time period?
I literally knew nothing about this program.
Okay.
I mean, I can basically I can tell you how I came across your program, but I really was in just sort of like my whole life had just kind
Yeah.
of exploded, and I was trying to figure out the next step for myself.
Yeah, that's very like, I don't know if you're into this kind of thing, but like I did an episode on how like 2025 was like a year of shedding. It definitely sounds like that really aligns for what you were
Absolutely.
going through.
Absolutely. And all of that, because I met you in April, all of that change and transformation had happened within the first 3 months of
Yeah.
2025. So it was a pretty monumental time in my life.
Yeah, and I remember like hopping on the call with you and obviously like you sharing all these different things that we were going through or you were going through in that time of life. I was like, this program's going to be perfect because this is like everything that we do in the program is talking about reinvention. If you're going through big changes, like you don't have to be going through all of those big changes. Like Carey definitely had a lot going on. But if you're at a crossroads or you're like wanting to step into something new, like that is literally the container we're fostering all summer. But I remember like another really big piece for you was like wanting to make more community and more friendships. That's something that we talked about on our call. And then also, I remember like the financial investment was a bigger concern for you too, because also if you didn't know me, I'm sure you're just like, okay, I don't know about like, this program or her programs or what this is about. So I actually remember referring you to connect with our past Adventurous Reinvention Experience client, Lauren, who I may have had a clip of last year. So some people might recognize her name. But what was that conversation like with Lauren that kind of gave you the boost that you needed to take the leap of faith to join us in a program you didn't know that much about?
Yeah, well, so you're right. I didn't know the program at all. I didn't know you.
Yeah,
Finances were a concern for me because of all the big changes I had just gone
right.
through. So I hadn't
Yeah.
even stabilized from all my changes. But actually, the bigger concern for me was I was worried that everybody was going to be so much younger than me. And
Mm.
I was
That's
about to,
so common. People always say that to
yeah,
me.
and you said that too. And, I was about to turn 50. And even though no part of me feels 50, I
Yeah.
just, 50 is a number. But I still felt like, I was worried about going into a reinvention program where people were so much younger and
Yeah.
they were reinventing their lives, and I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm like about to turn 50 and I'm trying to reinvent my life, and how am I going to relate to 30-year-olds? And so you put me in touch with Lauren,
Yes.
who
Okay. I
was
remember
right around the
exactly
same
that.
age as me, or maybe a little
Yeah.
older, I don't remember. And in my conversation with her,
Yeah.
I came to really feel like, okay, this is the right place for me to be. And ironically, the irony of that conversation is that her daughter,
Yes.
Luna, who's 23, or at least she was last year, was on
He
our,
was like our youngest
yeah,
ARE member.
and
Yeah.
actually ended up being like one of my favorite people on the trip. And
Yeah.
so the worry, I mean, everybody on the trip was my favorite person, but
Yeah.
my worry about how will I connect to people so much younger than me absolutely ended up not being a concern at all. But it was in talking with Lauren that I really felt like, okay, there will be other women who are like me.
Going through similar stages of life. Yeah.
Yeah, it was important to me as I sort of stepped into this reinvention stage that I also be held in community by women who, would be going through major
Yeah.
life changes, at 50 or, 60, because it is different, when you're making big life moves
Yeah.
a few decades down the road. Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. I can totally see that. And like I mentioned to you before, you're definitely not the first person I'm glad you brought that up because I completely forgot about that. But I do think like something that you said about having Luna on the trip and we had a wide range of different age ranges and seasons of life people on our trip. But it's always like what amazes me after hosting this for 3 years is just like how much we get to learn and we get to share and they get to share with us. Like that's just such a beautiful part of like being women together
Yeah.
in an experience like
I
this.
think that was actually one of my favorite things about the trip was
Yeah.
learning and hearing where all the different women were at the different stages of their lives. And one of my
Yeah.
favorite memories from the trip was actually the last night of the trip when
Yeah.
we all sat around in a circle and Luna, just speaking of her, asked for, we went around the circle and she said, what advice would you give to somebody my age? What life advice? And the best part of that experience for me was listening to the different life advice from the different ages of women because everybody had different advice and it really came from where they were in their lives. So the advice from a 28-year-old was very different from the advice from a 65-year-old. And so it was
Yes.
such a rich experience. I think we all learned a lot from that experience.
I do too. I know that I think Luna wrote them all. She had a map of the area we were in, and I think she wrote everybody's like little things that they said to her on the little map that she was carrying with her. I should get a picture
I know. We're all trying to
of
get
that.
that.
Okay, that's great background. I think like, back when I first launched the Adventurous Reinvention Experience for the first time in 2023, I think a lot of people like were most excited about the guided backpacking, which it is amazing. Honestly, one of the reasons I choose the Eastern Sierras is because that area, and Carey, because you've been there before even going with us. It just has a really special, magical way about it. Like it's hard to explain to people, but I'm like, I have to, it's like one of those places you're like, I have to bring you there if you're my friend. Like it's a very special place to me. But a lot of people get excited about that part, but a big part of the program is also kind of the coaching and like reinvention trainings that we do throughout the summer and really just giving ourselves a container to like think about the lives we want to be creating and the possibilities we want to be creating because it's so easy to like get in a rut with ourselves and limit ourselves in possibility and get stuck in stories that we've been telling ourselves for certain periods of times. Like I literally go through this reinvention work with everyone every single summer because it helps me uncover like a new layer I want to work on or something I want to grow into. So, kind of backing into that, but Carrie, you actually came in with a lot of hiking and backpacking experience. So I know like that part appealed to you from you just already know you love it and like you're also interested in the community piece. And you know that like adventure can be a really great catalyst for reinvention. So I think that this part of your story is super interesting. And you told us a little bit more about it when we got to meet you in person at the in-person backpacking part of the adventure. So this is your story and your path to motherhood. Maybe you can share a little bit of that story, how your solo hike of Half Dome, which is in Yosemite National Park, which, if those of you who are listening don't know what that is, that's in the Eastern Sierra area that we're talking about. We did our trips in. But her solo hike of Half Dome leading her to becoming a mom. Maybe you can share that story a little bit with
Yeah, I'd
us.
love to. It's one of my favorite stories. So when I was about, well, I was 34 years old, 33, 34 years old, and I always knew I wanted to be a mother. It was very much what I wanted out of my life, and I was not in the relationship that was going to lead to that. And so I made the very challenging and sort of courageous decision to try to have a baby on my own. And, that wasn't the way I saw it, but,
Yeah.
that's the way it was going to be. And so I actually went through, the process of finding a sperm donor and going through that whole process and getting my family on board. And that was a huge, huge uh, just transition moment for me. And I
Right.
tried a few times to get pregnant, and
Yeah.
I didn't get pregnant for the first couple of tries. And so I thought, okay, let me just clear my head and just give myself a break before I try again. And my go-to when I need to just kind of come back to myself is always the mountains.
Yeah.
That's just my church. That's my spiritual home. So I thought, all right, I'm just going to go hike Half Dome because, and that's a huge hike, by the way. It's not a
Yeah.
just hike Half Dome. It's 19 miles
But
round
a
trip.
great place to clear your head.
Yes, but
You have a lot of
um,
miles.
and I was part of a hiking group that I joined, and so I headed out to Yosemite to Half Dome. And while I was hiking up Half Dome, I was talking with one of the participants on the trip, who was this very nice man, and he was very excited about, the journey that I was on to become a solo mother, and just was super nice. And we had 19 miles to talk to each other and get to know each other. And by the end of the 19 miles, um, he offered to help me have a baby.
I love that.
And
I remember the first time you told me this story, I was like, wait, what? Awesome.
and so sort of keeping the podcast, PG, I will say that 1 year later I had a baby.
That's amazing.
And I had a baby with this person who I barely knew, but who was really wonderful and who later became my husband.
Yeah.
Although we actually ended up not staying together, but he's a wonderful, wonderful father. And in the end, I was able to have the baby, and who's now my 16-year-old daughter, and actually, and now I'm a single parent. So in the end, I did actually end up doing it by myself, but not really, because he's there as
Yeah.
a wonderful support as well. And it all happened because I decided to go hike Half Dome, and
Right.
and actually Half Dome is the place that I have returned again and again when I've had huge transitional moments in my life. In fact, years later, when we actually got divorced, I went back to Half Dome and hiked Half Dome again, and then
Yeah.
did it again last year when I ended a relationship. So it seems to be a very spiritual mecca for me. Every time I go there, I expect something really big to happen.
Yes, I love that. I also just like this is such a good example of like s- this is an example of kind of some of I know you weren't in ARE when this happened, but like the work we do in ARE is kind of aligning with what you want and then like being open to those possibilities. But you were like already doing this like when you were in you were like your mid 30s and you were like I know I want to become a mom. And so you were like I think it's just such a beautiful example of like being very clear on what you want and what you want to create and the possibilities you want to create in your life and then being open and the universe is like presenting you these very unique opportunities to motherhood that you will like you would have never probably ever written that down.
No, never. And I
Meet the
certainly
man
didn't
on the
go.
trail.
I didn't go to Yosemite to find a baby. I went
Yes,
to Yosemite to
exactly.
clear my head, but because I was in a place I loved, doing the thing I loved,
Yes.
I was open to this completely insane possibility that presented itself.
Yeah.
And I don't regret that for 1 second.
I know that's so incredible. I just think that's such a unique story. I just wanted to point that out too because I think one of the big benefits of getting really clear on like what you want and what you want to create and what you want for yourself is we don't always know the how of like how we're going to make it happen or how it's going to unfold, but if we get really clear on the destination, like then we can be open to the different I've just experienced this so many times in my own life too, with like leaving my job and creating new things that now I just really believe in that magic. And then you add in Half Dome, and of course, there's going to be like
I mean, that's
really
just such a
crazy.
magical place. Just shout out to anybody who's never been to Yosemite or Half Dome. I mean, it has to be on your bucket list. But I'm just thinking about, I know your story and you talk a lot about your year of yes.
Yes.
And I resonate with that a lot because I find that that's the only way to actually make things happen. Because
Yes.
otherwise, I mean, I have to believe that if I just say yes to things, even if I don't know what's going to happen, I'm open to possibilities. And so I've
Yeah.
taken a lot of inspiration by that part of your story, and I'm
Oh,
doing
great.
that a lot
I
myself.
love that.
Mhm.
Well, I obviously took me and you have like oddly, it's not like similar stories because I haven't, pursued motherhood in that way, but like I mean, just finding the magic of like Half Dome and being out there too, like that's actually where I feel like I was reborn in a way of like I found the outdoors and that's where everything changed for me. It's just, yeah, an incredible thing. And that was in my year of yes that happened. Um, Okay, so actually, before we kind of get into area experience, I think another really interesting part of your story is you have this beautiful daughter, and eventually you get married to this man that you met on the trail, and you actually have a really incredible, adventurous kind of family life, and you thru hiked the John Muir Trail with your 6-year-old daughter. This is what I remember on your intake form before I even like got to like meet with you on our first call. I was like, "Oh my gosh, wow, she's done like the whole John Muir Trail and everything." So I was like very interested. So maybe you can tell the listeners a little bit about that story.
Yeah, well, I mean that's a huge story, but I'll
Yeah.
back up a little bit just to say that so because my former husband and I met on Half Dome, we I mean adventure and hiking and backpacking was such a huge part of both of our lives
Yeah.
that once our daughter was born, it just was very clear to us that we were not going to stop adventuring. In fact,
Yeah.
I didn't even stop adventuring while I was pregnant. I think my last big hike or adventure, I don't know, I might have been like 7.5 months pregnant or something like that. So, and then I
Love
realized
that.
I should probably rein this in. But all that to say, we really started backpacking with her pretty much from the time she was about a year and a half. And
Yeah.
it was initially, they were small trips because I had to carry her in the
Yeah.
carry-on pack, and so we were limited to how far we could go because my former husband had to pretty much carry everything. Um,
Right. And you're still learning how to like, you're adding a new person into the mix. So everyone's
Absolutely,
got their own learning curve in
a
that
new, very,
experience.
very tiny person, and
Yes.
so when she was very small, we just did really, really small trips, one night, two-night
Yeah.
trips, just so that we could prove to ourselves that, okay, we don't have to stop adventuring just because we're parents.
Yeah.
And then once she was about 3.5, 4 years old, I said, okay, you're out of the pack. You're walking. And then that actually expanded what we could do because now suddenly I could carry a pack and now we could start doing 5-day trips, 7-day trips. And so
Yeah.
we did several of those. I mean, that was sort of how we spent our summers as a family. And a lot of it was in the Sierras just because we live here in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
And so by the time our daughter was 5, it seemed very, very feasible that we could do an even longer through hike. And so we got it in our
Yes.
mind to do the John Muir Trail, which is, for those people who don't know, it's 220 miles from Yosemite to Mount Whitney. It's one of the most iconic, well, people will know because they've, of course, listened to your podcast.
I
Um,
mean, maybe not. You never know who's picking this up. I think
that's true. That's
context is
true.
great.
But all this to say, it's a very, very rigorous trail. It's not just
Yeah.
220 miles. It's up and over 10 mountain passes, and it's
Right. It's
a
a
lot.
lot. Like I'm just trying to even wrap my head around like a 6-year-old doing it. I maybe you can give us context of like how you guys decided to split that up or like what did that look like with your daughter? I'm assuming she was into this stuff because you had already been doing things with her um
Yeah, well, I
summers
mean, she
prior.
was 6, so we didn't
Yeah.
really give her a choice or ask her if
Yeah.
she wanted to do it. We just said, this is what we're
This is
doing.
happening. Yeah.
But she had had a lot of her own personal
She had a
backpacking.
lot of experience. Yeah.
At that time, she didn't carry a pack. She just carried herself. So,
Yeah.
so we put the whole trip together and we were doing it in one fell swoop. So we were going, north to south, and we planned it originally as a 28-day trip because we were trying to figure how fast would she walk, how many miles could we go each day, and
Yeah.
so um, we planned it with that in mind. Turns out she just was on fire once we hit the trail, and
She's like, no pack, no problems.
totally. And she, I think she just kind of came alive on the trail, and
Yeah.
we ended up. shaving a week off of our total itinerary,
Wow, that's
which is a
crazy.
lot when you're
Yes.
doing a 28-day trip. And it was just that we basically followed her pace. We just
Yeah.
decided at the end of each day, we kind of did like a family assessment, like, should we camp here? Should we go 2 more miles? And we always kind of let her guide that because
Yeah.
it was important that she feel comfortable. Um, and it ended up being really just an exceptional experience. Very, very challenging. I have a blog about it and I wrote about some of the challenges that we faced.
Yes. And we're going to link that in the show notes because, I mean, obviously, we could almost have a whole podcast episode on this whole experience that you had with your
um,
daughter.
yeah, but it was pretty fun. She actually set the world record as the youngest through hiker of the Jumner Trail, which was then later broken like a month later.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's cra Isn't that wild how that happens? Like, wasn't that with, well, never mind. I'm diverging. I'm thinking
Yeah,
of
so,
like
so
other
for
things, but
so for 1 month, so she gets to, when she's in college and she does the
she
two
could
three
put that on
mile,
her
she
resume.
gets to say I was a world record holder for all
That's
of
awesome. I wouldn't have even thought to like look that up.
them.
That's so fun. I love
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely such an incredible story. And I remember when Carrie first like kind of told me that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And she has, like she mentioned, like a whole blog kind of going through more of the details. So I'm for sure going to link that in the show notes if you want to learn more about that story from Carrie. So let's shift some gears, maybe talk about your experience in the Adventurous Reinvention Experience. So like we just talked about, you came into the program with already a lot of hiking and backpacking experience already, clearly. And you fostered your child going on the JMT. Like you had a lot of knowledge and confidence and self-trust in that environment. So how did you know? I mean, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but do you have anything else to add to like how you know this program was something that you wanted to do at this stage in life?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like you said, I wasn't coming into the program to learn backpacking skills, although actually I learned a lot from you. And so to say
Oh,
that,
great.
I didn't I didn't learn would be incorrect because I actually learned a lot of really cool things.
I
But the
love
big
that.
draw for me, was especially given where I was in my life, where I was just essentially felt like I was kind of emotionally starting over, is I really, really wanted to build community. And
Yeah.
I wanted it to be a community of women, and I wanted it to be centered around adventure. And so I joined this program because I knew that that's what I needed at that
Yeah.
stage in my life, and that was central to my own sort of personal emotional recovery and my happiness and my
Yes.
well-being. And that was the big draw that drew me into the program.
And I think like one thing I want to note about that here is like Carrie was very clear on like what she really wanted to create. And like one thing I really admired about that, Carrie, is that you got what you came for. Like you went after it. Like you joined the program and you were immediately, because I think I remember telling you, I'm like, put your stuff out there, tell people where you're from, like start engaging right away. And you were like doing that. You introduced yourself and you immediately, I think like even in the first month started potentially meeting up. Didn't you like meet up with people within the first
Yeah,
month?
so there were two women who lived in the Bay Area. One actually
Yes.
out, Terry, and then one about an hour away, Sheena. And so we immediately started hiking together, with doing
Yeah.
our training hikes, which was amazing because by the time we got to the actual trip, I felt like I knew both of them. And
Yes.
um,
I just
that
thought that was incredible because you were like, I want to do this. And then you were like, okay, I'm doing this.
Yes. No, I mean,
Yeah.
that was amazing just getting to know them beforehand. And then the other big piece to that end was that there were two other women, Marissa and Julia, who also wanted to explore and do things before the trip. And we all
Yeah.
met
Like
sight
right before the trip, right?
right before the trip. I drove
Yeah.
to the airport. I picked up these two women from the airport who I'd never met. I mean, I'd never met them in real life. Of course, we'd met on
Yes.
coaching calls. And then we went and had this incredible adventure in Yosemite,
Yeah.
dome in the background, for 3 days before our trip. So by the time we arrived at the trip, We were like fast friends and
Yes.
felt like we had had this whole incredible adventure. And so when we started the trip, I felt like these four women in particular were people I had known for months already. And so
Yes.
it was actually the community that I was trying to create and come for. It was an amazing experience.
I love that. And maybe something else you can touch on too is like I know you're a mom and right now or like during this period in particular you were doing a lot of things as a single mom and a lot of moms feel like they're too busy to fit in, hiking or like adventure into their own lives or like really prioritizing themselves and like what they want to create into their busy lives. And also you have a career and you are busy with that as well. So how did you commit to something like this for yourself? Like we have weekly coaching calls. There's training that we're doing, separately but collectively together as a group. Because you were in, I mean, all the groups do training together, but you were in the intermediate group. So there's even more, training and preparation that we're doing in the midst of like being a mom and like having your career and having a busy life that you're like also fostering as well and creating community, which is also time consuming too. So maybe you could walk us through what that was like for you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the commitment was actually exciting. I
Yeah.
didn't see it as a burden at all. I mean, I looked forward to the coaching calls
Yes.
because I loved meeting the women on the calls. I loved meeting you. The calls were really, really super helpful. And for me, training is actually something I love to do. So I
Yeah.
didn't see it as I have to do this, but I get to do this. And the framework of the training, it sort of gave me an excuse of, well, I have to put my miles in every
Yes.
every week into the spreadsheet and everybody's going to see it. And so it was for me it was less of a how do I do this and more of a I get to do this. And I
Yeah.
think
Which
because
is
I
such a great mentality to have with it. Yeah.
yeah, for me just as a lifetime adventure person and also I'm also a health and wellness coach. I see these kind of things not as things I have to make time for, but things I absolutely need in my life no matter
Right.
what. And so that's not to say that it wasn't juggling a lot, but
Yeah.
I think it's really a mindset thing for me because I just loved the training. To me, it was a joy.
How did that look like for you practically? Like if somebody's sitting here and it's like, I love the idea of this, but like, were for you, because everybody has different styles. I'm very much like a pre-planner person. Some people are a little bit more on the fly, but like, did you look at your whole week and you were just like, okay, I'm going to slot in time for this stuff and coordinate with getting help with my daughter? Or she's a little bit older now, right?
Yeah, so she's 16. So I
Yeah.
mean,
Okay. She's a lot more independent than she
yeah, and
was.
absolutely, I fully acknowledge that if you're a mother who is parenting, a toddler or a elementary school age kid, I mean, you've got a totally different set of circumstances. So,
Yeah.
I do have a 16, well, she's 16 now. She was 15 last year, but I also share custody. So I'm
Yeah.
very lucky in that, half of my time is kind of my own. So,
Yeah.
but on a practical level, yeah, I would look at my week and I would say, okay, I have to get these training hikes in. Um, when am I going to fit them in? That's always been my whole life, even before I joined your program. That's always
Yeah.
been my anchor is when
Like
am I going to get
putting
my
it first. Yeah.
exercise? Yeah, where am I going to hike this week? When am I going to, get my exercise? And that's how I anchor my life. And in fact, one of the reasons I left Kaiser and to pursue my private practice was so that I could anchor my work around my health and wellness because that's we could do a whole other podcast on this, but you turn 50 and
Yeah.
if you don't prioritize your physical health and wellness, I mean things ramp up very quickly. And
Yeah.
so I think as somebody who's always relied on my physical body to kind of come home to, and then suddenly
Right.
my physical body is saying, "Hey, we've got news for you. You're not 30 anymore." it's
Yeah.
made me realize that that has to be the anchor around which everything else is built. And so
Right.
that's kind of why I left Kaiser to pursue my private practice, was that I could build my life around my health.
Yeah, I can relate to that. And I mean, I think even people who, maybe you don't have that same flexibility necessarily. We have plenty of like clients who also are juggling a lot in their weeks. And the way I like to look at it is just like kind of like Carrie said. But it's like this, I see this part of my life, like if it's a value to me, like having adventure and adventurous life is a core value to me. And it's something that I really treat as like a non-negotiable. So I almost similar to Carrie at the beginning of my week, it's like one of the first things I look at. Like where right now my in my season of life currently in this very specific moment, it's climbing. And I'm like, when am I going to get out to climb? And when I'm going to meet my friend at the gym to climb? We send a text on Monday mornings and we both look at each other's schedules and we slot it in. And sometimes that means like I'm waking up at 5:30 a.m. to meet her before we both start work. And sometimes it's a later night session, but like, we give you a lot of ideas in the program to like figure it out even in the midst of a busy week if maybe your only open time is the weekend to go hike. But there's so many different ways to kind of add it in. And I think it's like that future version of you want to step into anyway. So I would like encourage you to think about like what's that version of me that does prioritize this
Yeah,
in my
and
life.
for me, for instance, as a therapist and working now in private practice, I do have the the privilege and the flexibility of deciding when I'm going to see clients,
Mhm.
and I don't see clients late in the evening for two reasons. When I have my daughter, but
Yeah.
also because it is very important to me to be able to, well, now go to the climbing gym because that's my new thing.
Yes.
And
We'll talk about that in a
yeah,
minute because
we'll talk about
that's a
that
plot
too.
twist.
But yes, you're big on the plot twist. But yeah, I really, to me, it really just fundamentally is a non-negotiable, and that's been true for most of my life, but it's especially true now as I have to kind of pick and choose where to spend my time.
Yeah. And that's kind of like one thing I like to think about. Like, if this is a lot of people like enter our world and they're like, I want this to be a more important thing in my life. And I think sometimes having a little bit of somebody uh, encouraging you to try a training plan that may require that you think about your time a little bit more specifically like this, but the version of you that shows up to that and like learns how to do that and fails a little bit along the way, but also like has so many wins along the way, like that is a totally different version of yourself than
I
maybe
love,
you can see right
I
now.
loved the training plan that you put
Yeah.
together for us, and I will say, as somebody who has been a sort of lifetime backpacker and hiker, I've never really sort of actively trained
Yeah.
for trips until I signed up with ARE. And that was the
That's very common, actually. Yeah.
but I have to say, Allison, I found the training plan to be not only so supportive, but incredible by way of preparation. I mean, not just for me, but I think for everybody on the trip.
Yeah. Everyone showed up in a good space, I feel
And
like.
I was amazed at the strength of the group, and I
Yeah.
think a lot of it had to do with the quality and um, accountability of the
Yeah.
training that you put together.
So don't be intimidated by it. We support you through the whole thing. But like, I just wanted to share Carrie's experience around that because I think it's important too. Because like, I know time can be a big thing that everybody's thinking about when they're, considering adding in a training plan. But I love the growth it like asks us to step into. And it's usually a very supportive thing for your mental health and your physical health. And that just benefits every other area of your life, kind of like Carrie was mentioning, like she needs that for her life and, showing up for her family and her daughter as well. Um, okay, so you really showed up for the coaching part of the program. And yeah, you rarely missed our weekly calls. I remember seeing you there very consistently. And there are replays for as well. So some people could come to the live and some people would watch the replays or a little bit of mix. But I'm curious to know, like, what did you personally gain the most from the coaching portion of our re Adventurous Reinvention experience?
Yeah, I mean, I loved the coaching part of the program. I've spent a lot of my lifetime and money in therapy and self-help programs and transformational workshops and you name it, I've done it.
Yeah.
What I loved about your coaching was it was very forward thinking and active, and I found that to be a really, really good complement to the more therapeutic work that I've done both
Yeah.
personally and also professionally. And I loved that it was it just was very action oriented, which I needed at that time in my life. I mean, I was going through such a giant life transformation. I needed action steps. I needed accountability. I needed to see all these other women who were doing the same thing. And so
Yeah.
to me, it was just really inspiring. Um, to just show up and to I felt like that the action steps, the learnings, the teachings were very digestible, and they just gave me a framework to work with.
Right. And it's more like a lot of it is a clarity. I kind of tell people like you might not know in this moment when you first join like what's going to be created out of it. And for you, I think like you had like a vision of what you wanted to create out of the summer and you like got to work immediately and then some bonus stuff kind of uncovered along the way. But I think one of my favorite part is seeing like everybody kind of come up with their own sort of thing that they're working on that maybe they didn't even intend to work on when they started the program. Um, so I appreciate you saying that. I remember when I was first talking to you, I was like a little bit intimidated. I was like, Carrie's got a really strong background and, all of this work. And, that just speaks to like women, we often have imposter syndrome, but I knew that there was so much that we could create for you in this container, like that I wasn't worried so much about that. But I was always curious, like
Well,
how you felt going through.
I mean, I think for me, going back to the beginner's mind, aspect was
Yeah.
huge, just to say, okay, here I am. I'm at this stage in my life. I have a lot to learn from you and from all these other women. And I just, it was actually really helpful for me to kind of let go of everything that I already knew and say, well,
Yeah.
let me learn it again. Let me learn it differently. Let me learn it from a different angle. And I think I'm a way stronger, well, backpacker and person, I think, because of it.
Yeah. Well, I think like, there's so much value in like the work that you do. And I think coaching work can be like very powerful to pair with the type of work that you do in your private practice and stuff too. They're very different, I think. Like you said, sometimes the work goes together and sometimes one's more past focused or current state focused and one's very future focused. Anyways, I'm digressing a little bit about that. But okay, let's talk a little bit about we have like a little bit more time left together, but let's talk about you mentioned learning skills. Even though you're very like people listening to this are like she has a lot of experience in backpacking. So what could she have learned? I think I remember like a few things that we talked
Uh,
about like during the trip, but I'm curious you to mention them here again.
yeah, I mean, honestly, Allison, I think my favorite backpacking hack that I learned from you on the very first day, and that was
Yeah.
which I can't believe I didn't know this and didn't do it for, 20 years, but it was, you had us pull out our tents out of their sacks and just like stuff them into the backpacks, into all the little nooks
Just
and
loosely
crannies.
stuffed. Yeah.
I will never again backpack without doing that. It was the best hack and it was something that I learned from you on the very first day, and it was
Yeah.
such an incredible
It makes a
experience.
big difference with a bear can in particular.
Absolutely. Hmm.
Yeah. Because your packet, like anybody who's like not visualizing what she's saying, it's like sometimes this is a very symbolic actually message. Sometimes we think, oh, I have to be this one particular way. And the tent is in its tent bag, right? And the tent thinks it needs to be in its tent bag, but it doesn't actually need to be in its tent bag. And I mean, I did the same thing for a long time too, but I'm the same way, Carrie. Honestly, I've been backpacking for over a decade, and anytime I go out with somebody new, you kind of pick up something that they do, and you're just like, "Oh wow, that's so smart." Because you get kind of
Yeah,
like set in your systems and the way you do
exactly.
things, and I always like pick up something even from our ARE groups. I'll just be like, "Oh wow, that's really like I like that you did that." So I'm always like taking little notes on my
Yeah,
stuff. I'm like,
that
this
was an amazing skill. And then the other thing that I learned a lot about, which was never a good skill of mine, was food and food
oh
preparation.
yeah.
That is such a huge component. You talk about being intimidated. I was so intimidated by the food
Yeah.
preparation part because people were just coming out with these things that were just exquisite. And I thought, oh, I mean, I have been a very simple foodie. I mean, even when we did the JMT with our daughter, I mean, we were very simple. So I was very intimidated by that, and I learned so much from you, from the other participants, and I really upped my game when it
Yeah,
came.
you got creative.
Yeah,
I do remember like talking to you. I'd be like, don't get so overwhelmed. Like, do a little new thing and we'll
uh,
expand. Because some people really love the food part and some people get very overwhelmed by the food part. So there's like in betweens, but Carrie
yeah,
embraced it. Wasn't that like that was like the same week we were talking about like incorporating a tiny new possible or like I
yeah,
am seeing yourself just a differently in one way and you were like, I am a person who meal preps.
yeah. And it was not. I mean, to be clear, it actually was intimidating for me, and it was hard,
Yeah.
but I did it, and I feel like it was actually of all my backpacking training moments, I actually feel like that was the hardest one for me and the one that I
Yeah.
had to put the most effort into. Just because I don't even like to cook at home. And so
Yes.
getting creative around food was a real stretch goal for
Yeah.
me.
That's awesome. So how did the coaching calls before the trip? So we met almost every single week. I think we meet pretty much every single week. There might have been like one off week during a holiday or something leading up into our trip. So people who are listening, usually we kick off our program in May, and usually our trips are sometime in either late July or early August. But we do weekly calls leading up into that with the coaching and also prepping you for the adventure. So it's a little bit of adventure coaching. It's a little bit of like the reinvention coaching process that we walk you through. But how did that prepare you for meeting like and backpacking for 6 days with a bunch of strangers on the internet?
Well, I think the biggest piece is that by the time we got to the trailhead, like they didn't feel like strangers. And
Yeah.
so I'd say that's the biggest thing I would say is that it really connected us as a group. I mean, and as I said, I met four of the women
I was like,
beforehand.
especially for you. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was, and again, that was my primary goal in coming here was to really, form community.
Yeah.
And we got that on the calls. And so by the time we got to the first campsite where we all met up, people would get out of their cars and we would just
Oh, you're like, oh, you're so and
embrace
so.
in
Like,
a huge hug, and so
yeah.
we really felt like we already knew each other. So I think that was a huge preparation. And then, like I said, just the training, the food prep, I just felt like those were invaluable pieces for preparing us for the actual
Yeah.
trip itself.
Yeah, I agree. I always think like people ask me this sometimes too. They're like, "Oh, is it hard to meet up with, all these clients you've never met before?" I'm like, "I don't know. It hasn't been that hard. Like, I actually get to know you guys all summer and I feel really close to you and then we get to go on this adventure and really like solidify our relationship because there's nothing more bonding than like being outdoors on the trail with people, to me at least. So, I find it very like a smooth transition. Okay. Let's go into just talking a little bit about after the Adventurous Reinvention Experience. It's been about, we ended our program in September, like early September. It's been about maybe like 6-ish months since that. So after the backpacking trip, there are actually a few things that kind of like came out of this experience, particularly for you outside of like creating community, which you did. But you decided you wanted to experiment with your career and how you provide services. And you also got into a new activity. Maybe do you want to expand a little bit on those?
Sure. So as you might remember, on the very last day of our trip, I made some comment. I said, what am I going to do without all of you? I felt so connected. And you said, well, come climbing with us in Greece. And,
Yeah.
and
We
I
had
said,
just like literally opened up that spots for that program. It's only like it was only like 8 people we could take, but I was like,
"Yeah,
you should come climbing.
climbing with us in May. And I said, well, okay, but I'm not a climber. And you said, well, become a climber.
I'm like, you have plenty of time, Carrie.
And so I went home and decided that I was going to go on this trip because I was following your Year of Yes suggestion, and I signed up for this climbing trip and then decided to become a climber. And I think I had climbed maybe a handful of times before in my life, but by no
Yeah.
means would I call myself a climber. Um,
I had like kind of inception them all summer that climbing was the most amazing thing.
Yeah, you were it was definitely kind of your thing, and so we heard a lot about that. And like I said, I had been in a handful of times, but I
Yeah.
mean, I
You had
haven't.
some touch points with it. So you knew you didn't
Right.
absolutely hate it. You were like,
Exactly.
okay, I'm curious. Yeah.
So I came back, and I met up with a friend who also was interested in sort of getting that going again, and we started climbing, and then she signed up for your trip as
Yeah.
well. And then we started climbing more, and then I started going to women's climbing meetups and meeting more people. And then the next thing I knew, I had like five different climbing partners.
Carrie's
And
like a full blown like rock climber now. Like she goes very regularly
And
now.
now I go climbing like 3 times a week. I'm going tonight. I was there yesterday, and
I'm going tonight as well. Yes.
it's so crazy because this was not anywhere on my radar. And now, just in the same way that I built hiking around my schedule around hiking,
Yeah.
I now build my schedule around climbing, and
Yeah.
I make sure that I can get to the climbing gym like 3 times a week. And it's just kind of surreal that that's what's
Yeah.
happening. And so I will be with you, Allison, and
It's going to
uh,
be so fun.
and it's nine
I
other.
think that was like the biggest plot twist. I just wasn't we that wasn't on Carrie's radar all summer, and then it was like we had that trip and I was just like, wow, like Carrie's like going all in. And then now every time I get an update from you and like how your climbing's going, I'm just like, I love this. This is so great.
And most importantly, it's totally consistent with what my goal was coming into ARE, which was to
Hmm.
build community.
Community,
And
exactly.
that's what I
I've
have,
always thought climbing was a really great way to build community.
and I'm finding, I mean, because the climbing meetups I've been going to, they're not just people climbing, but they're going and doing cool things. And I met a woman who does this thing where she goes out with other women, on Saturday morning, and they walk 4 miles and jump in the ocean. And so it's
Yeah.
just
Oh my gosh. We didn't even
basically,
talk about all the alpine dips from the
yeah,
trip.
it's, oh gosh. Yeah, so it's been a portal into amazing community.
I
And
love that.
that's been a real highlight of my life, this last 9 months.
And then I know with your, private practice, you were talking about experimenting with some kind of like new services or like, how has that been going for you?
Yeah, I mean, that's still a work in progress.
Yeah.
And the services you're talking about is I wanted to expand to do more walking therapy sessions and sort of be out in nature. And part of that came from, we were out in nature doing this trip, and I came back and I thought, oh my God, how can I sit here all day long? And I did actually propose that to a couple of clients. And so I do have two clients who I see
Yeah.
outdoors. I'd love for it to be more,
Yeah.
but that's continuing to be a work in progress. So to be continued. You can
Yeah.
ask me about that next year.
Oh, and we're gonna link like if you happen to be in the area where Carrie lives, I'm linking her how you can reach out to her too if you're interested in that. But yeah, that's just I think it's so beautiful like what you've created and the friendships that you did create. I mean like you started that right away and it's just really grown. I think like you put that possibility out there and it's just like I don't know, it hasn't ended. So that's been a really beautiful like transformation to see come out of this year for you. So I'm curious to know, we talked about this just a few minutes ago, but like, do you have anything else on your 2026 adventure calendar outside of climbing in Greece with me in a few months?
Yes, and actually, that sort of speaks to the community piece that you were talking about. So, in addition to the Greece trip, which is in May, just 2 months later, I am going to hike the Haute Route in the Alps from
Oh, nice.
Chamonix to Zermatt, which was a huge bucket list trip.
Yeah.
It's a through hike. It's a hut to hut through hike, and I am
Oh, that'll be so fun.
um, with Julia, with one of the women I met through your program. And
Yes.
the most amazing thing, I mean, what I wanted from the ARE program was to create a community of fellow female adventurers. And so
Yeah.
I had already gotten it in my head that I was going to do this trip one way or another, and I was prepared to do it by myself. But I
Yes.
put it out into we've started or we have a WhatsApp group of the women from our trip that was very
Yeah.
active. We're always chatting, all of us, and I just
I
put it
love
out there
that.
and I said, I want to do this. Who wants to do it with me? And Julia responded within about 2 minutes, and we jumped on
Yeah.
a call. And the very next day, we started planning our trip.
Oh, that's so good. I love that. Are you doing that? You said in 2 months later,
Doing
so
it in July, so
July.
in the end of July to early August. And so it's a 2 week trip, and I'm really excited about it. And really excited to be doing it with Julia, who was one of the two women who I did the pre-trip with, the Yosemite trip.
Yes.
So this community just is continuing to expand, and we've all stayed connected, which has been
I
amazing.
love that. Yeah. That is amazing. I know we're getting kind of close to time, so let's just jump into one thing I like to do to like end interviews with anybody is I just think it's fun to just jump into some rapid fire questions so people can get to know about your personality a little bit and your quirks. And I just think it's kind of a fun way to wrap things up and we'll do some closing thoughts. Does that sound good?
That sounds great.
Okay, so what is your go-to trail snack, Carrie?
So currently, I'm obsessed with chomps. The
Chomps. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
those
the
are
bean
great.
sticks.
I will always wrap those in a tortilla, like and have those as a snack on the go.
Yeah,
That's great.
they're my current obsession. Mhm.
I love it. Okay, where would you hike again and again and again?
Yeah, I would have to say the North Cascades,
Ah,
which
plot
I think is
twist.
one of the least visited national parks in the US and probably one of the most incredible places I've been. I would,
I have never been
oh,
actually.
you have to
Yeah,
go.
I
It's
need to go.
really one of the most incredible places.
I see Donna talk about it a lot and I've had it on my list for a while. I just need to like plan it.
It's an amazing area.
Okay, so what hike is at the top of your adventure bucket list?
Well, probably the one I'm doing this summer,
Yeah, I was gonna say it might be this one that you're doing this
yeah.
summer.
But I've been hearing about and researching and hearing other people talk about some of the Scandinavian hikes, like the
Mhm.
what is it called? The Lofoten or Lof I don't know how you say
Oh, yeah, Lofoten or Lofoten
Lofoten
in Norway,
Crossing.
right?
That looks really cool.
Oh
So
yeah,
that's kind
totally.
of on my
I
bucket list.
think that's the one that my friend just did
Yes.
back this last summer, Marie. Yeah.
That's how
It
I heard
sounded
about it on her
incredible. Yeah.
podcast.
For sure. I love like hiking and international travel. I think it's so fun. What is your favorite luxury item to take backpacking?
Okay, you're gonna yell at me for this one because it's
I'm
heavy.
I'm not gonna yell at you, Carrie. Never.
Because it truly is a luxury item. My favorite
Okay.
luxury item is actually my backpacking hammock. And
Oh, yeah.
I
Nice.
love
You
taking
didn't bring that though with us,
no,
right?
I didn't think it was going to make it past the Allison Kelly filter. I didn't actually bring it on our trip, but it is truly a luxury item, and it's my
That's
favorite.
funny. Actually, like people sometimes think I'm kind of hard on them with the packing because we really, especially people that are newer, we try to really get your packs as efficient as possible so that you're not carrying more than you need to. But Carrie, you probably would have earned, like having done the JMT, you could have earned some luxury item weight. Like you, I already know that you know how to like what the pack weight feels like on you.
I know.
But that's
I
really
did
funny.
sneak my mouthwash past you, so
Yes. I do. I think I would like, you can bring it, Carrie, but do you need it? Uh,
Yes.
I love that. And then a final question. What is your favorite beach, a forest, or the mountains?
Mountains, no question.
No
Mountains.
question. Same. But I do like them all, actually. Okay, so before we officially close things up for this interview, I just kind of have a couple of closing questions. So the first one is, what advice do you have for mothers that maybe feel like they don't have the time to focus on their own goals, and prioritizing like hiking and adventure in their life?
Yeah, I would say don't give up on your goals, just incorporate your kids into them.
Mhm.
So you might have to do it differently for a while, a while being a couple of years, but
Yeah.
start with like a simple 1 day, 2 day car camping trip and then build up to, a 2 day trip and just if you can incorporate your kids into your goals and that way you don't have to give them up for years and years. And
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we all have to make concessions as parents, but I think there is a lot to be learned by actually bringing kids along the ride.
Yeah, like it might be a little bit more, it's going to have its own challenges and more complications than maybe going on your own, but it's going to be beautiful in its own way too. Um, I totally agree with you there. And then finally, what advice do you have for anyone who might be listening right now, for any woman that might be considering the Adventurous Reinvention experience, and wondering if they're a good fit? Do you have anything or final words that you might say to them?
Yeah, I can't imagine anyone not benefiting from the Adventurous Reinvention experience. I mean, everyone gets something amazing from it. So I think even if you're considering doing it, there must be a part of you that knows that this is sort of a calling. And I would say listen to that calling, listen to that wisdom inside you that knows that you've found yourself here for some reason. And you're going to get something out of it, no matter what it is. I would say if you have the resources and the time to do it, do it. It will
Yeah.
change your life. It's actually changed mine.
Oh, thank you, Carey. And like also I'm willing also to really have those conversations with you too. So if you need to have a deeper conversation on that, like you can jump on a call just like Carey did and we can have that like face-to-face conversation about it. Or you could even, like Carey did, speak to somebody that has done this experience before too. So, amazing. This was so fun. I like during our conversation, I'm like, I immediately know I need to have Carrie back on the podcast to like go deeper on some stories like the John Muir Trail story, or, I don't know. We came up with like five extra podcast topics
I
out of
know,
this.
I know.
But I really appreciate you for taking the time, sharing your story, sharing your adventurous reinvention experience story as well. So if anybody is listening to this and they would be interested in connecting with you, what is the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, I think probably through my website, which I think you'll link in the notes,
Yes.
wellnessworthliving.com. And
Hmm.
there's a contact me page on that site.
That's
And
her coaching and therapy practice
that's
website,
right.
which I'll for sure put in the show notes. Yeah.
That's right. And you can contact me through the contact me page there. And then if you just want to read about our trip on the JMT with my 6-year-old, there's actually a link to that in my website, but then there's a separate website, which is parentingoffthegrid.net.
I will also link to that too, because I know people will be interested in checking that out. So you can find both of those in the show notes. And yeah, if you want to connect with Carrie, definitely do so. She's an amazing human and building community. So thank you so much for being here, Carrie. I have loved talking with you, catching up, and sharing your story on the podcast.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here, Allison. I'm really was so happy you asked, and it just brings me so much joy to go back and remember the whole experience.
And our story isn't over because we're connecting in a couple months. So I'm very excited about that because I'm just super excited to see your growth as a climber and to like grow it again more in Greece. So that's going to be really special. So
Oh, thank you. I have you to thank for that, so I appreciate that.
thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. That is all that we have for you today. And I'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, I wanted to thank you real quick for tuning into the show and listening all the way to the end. If you love this episode and you want deeper support in becoming a safe, confident, and self-sufficient hiker and backpacker, then head over to shedreamsofalpine.com/waitlist to learn more about our Backpacking Badass coaching program, where I teach you absolutely everything you need to know to be self-reliant on the trails and stop waiting around on others for the adventure invite. So I'd love to help you more in your journey of stepping into your adventurous identity, and that program is the absolute best place for us to start working together. So again, that's shedreamsofalpine.com/waitlist, and you can learn all about it there. So that's it for today, folks. I hope you get to spend some time outside this week, and I'll be back very soon with a brand new episode. Bye.